Have you ever wanted to be a host on an ACA show or be the one calling the shots behind the scenes? Are you in Austin, Texas, or at least Austin adjacent? Well, on Saturday, February 25th, make your way down to the Free Thought Library because we'll be holding open auditions for show hosts and orientations for prospective crew members. For those wanting to be hosts, you'll be able to sit in the studio where our shows are broadcast and we'll put you through your paces to see if you can be one of the new personalities of the ACA. For future crew members, you'll get hands-on experience using the equipment used for broadcast and will help us record the host auditions. If you've ever dreamed of being part of the ACA productions, then this is your chance to show us what you've got. This event is free. For more information and registration, visit tiny.cc/ACA auditions.
That's right. That is right. You should be excited because it is time for another episode of Talk Heathen. Today is Sunday, February 5th, 2023, and I am your host, Secular Rarity, and joining me today is an absolutely brilliant friend of mine from England. 2 out of those things are true. You decide. It's Richard Gilliver. What's up, man?
Hello, I'm very, very excited. I'm unsure as to why somebody in the crew thought it was necessary to put a plate of fish and chips behind me.
I think it's a random picture. Yeah.
I looked emaciated and they thought I might be a little hungry or what.
Right. Well, it is kind of like dinner time over there, like where you're at, right? So, okay. Well, we might stop for a snack at some point. But before we do that, I need to remind you all that Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines right now. So make sure you get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/call-TH, because nobody wants to hear Richard and I just spend this whole time talking about English cuisine. I really feel like we all see the problems there, but we'll do it. We'll bust it out if we have to. I don't know. Is that a good idea to like threaten people? Like if you don't, like we'll just go through just like different recipes, like so 400 grams of ground lamb. And
I think the only person who would be interested in that show is student Dr. Ben.
That's very, yeah. That's just because he's just always looking at learning stuff, and he's actually very critical about another time, another place, folks. And the reason that we are going to move on is because we do actually already have a couple of calls, but we want some more. So give us a call again, 512-991-9242. And let me remind you all that Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. So big fans of those things here. And if you are a fan of those things and you want to support Talk Heathen and the ACA, you can do it. There's actually a lot of different ways. You can support us on Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. You can also just like the freaking video and subscribe to the channel. It's one of the easiest things you can do. It takes 5 seconds, no cost to you whatsoever. Then go ahead and enable those notifications and comment below on your favorite caller, your favorite host, your least favorite host, your favorite British dish. Like, honestly, we're open for it. Like, if somebody out there is just like, my favorite thing is mushy peas, I have some thoughts for you. But you can also become a channel member just by clicking the join button below the video, and you'll get super, super sweet chat emotes, and you can help perpetuate the mission of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Community of Austin. So sorry, chat mods, but if you are a member out there right now, go ahead and spam the chat with those emotes and make everybody else jealous. Because it's like 99 cents. You can do it for like 99 cents. Super easy. And then you can get all that cool stuff. And then just below that live chat, there's a fundraiser, and 100% of those proceeds go directly to the ACA. YouTube does not charge any fees, and that is a super, super great way to help us out. And before the show, we gathered a bunch of tickets and with all kinds of different numbers on them, 1 to 1,000. Some of our crew members hand wrote those and then put them in a hat. And the totally random number is 666 for today's goal. That's what we picked out. So it was a really big hat, had a lot of pieces of paper in it. But yeah, help us get to that goal today with that fundraiser. So what do you think, Richard? Should we take a call? Should we take a call?
I think we should take a call. Let's dive in.
Let's do it. Let's go out to Colorado. Evan, him has some thoughts maybe on some historical figures and Jesus. And what you got for us today, Evan?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So I wanted to ask about the historical relevance for like finding a figure to match up the Christ figure, the Yeshua figure to. I started thinking about like King Arthur, some other people that might be sort of legendary, and like there could be some kings or some pseudo, like mythological people that we're basing that off of. And I'm like, what's going on for Jesus? Because I can't like pick a person and say, oh, that's probably Jesus.
Yeah, and this is definitely the historicity and whole mythicist debate around the figure of Jesus is a very interesting one, I think, in an academic sense. For me personally, it's not something that really keeps me up at night, and I often don't find using it when discussing with believers, super worthwhile. But that being said, in the purely academic sense of just trying to trace this narrative as far back as we can go in history, well, for a lot of us, especially in the more Christian themed or kind of Christian dominant countries, we've heard a lot of stories before about how like solid all of this evidence is. But when you do actually go back through it, I find a lot of people kind of end up where you're at, Evan, where it's like, well, we don't really seem to have good stuff for this person like we do with a lot of other things. George Washington, for instance, there's a lot of really, really good historical evidence. When we go back that far in history, it gets harder and harder to nail it down. All of that being said, Evan, I'm definitely no historian. I'm definitely no expert on this. And there are a bunch of people that have, really, really great scholarship on this from a lot of different perspectives, both, believers, non-believers, all different stripes. Oftentimes when we go that far back in history, it is just kind of the base assumption, like if people are writing about a person, we tend to just go like, yeah, probably some dude exists, right? Because we know people have existed, and we know like people existed way back when in that area. And there was probably some guy walking around being like, let me tell you about God. Which, okay, that's probably the best, I think, when I look at stuff. But again, for me, this isn't something that I'm, keeps me up super much at night. But Richard, what are your thoughts on this? Have you ever delved into the historicity of Jesus?
I have a little bit. I'm actually interested in Evan's opinion on this. Is there anyone you've kind of come across in that respect, Evan, that you think might be kind of Jesus adjacent, shall we say?
That is a great question. I have not. I could only say like what Secular Rarity said. Like, if we're gonna put based on a true story in front of this, it's gonna be so vague that like there might have been an apocalyptic, traveling rabbi, but I haven't.
Well, I mean, we do that now in movies. We put based on true stories in movies now, and some of them are very, very loose regarding the actual history and this can be from like 20 or 30 years previously. I think the thing with the Jesus account is, and SR touched on it with a little bit with the George Washington thing, we do actually have very, very good evidence of historical figures from that period. I mean, my kind of go-to on this is Cleopatra, because she was kind of around the same time, only 20, 30 years previous to the time of Jesus, alleged time of Jesus. Uh, we have busts of her. We know a family line. We've got coins. We've got different busts in different styles. We've got carvings that she made in Egypt of herself, which is stylized again. We've got all this different information. We've got later historical writings, both for and against her. So we've got like this massive, massive pool of evidence for her. And it seems to me that if the Jesus story is correct as put forward by the Christians, Jesus was an infinitely more important character in history than Cleopatra was. And yet we have, to my mind, I think the best evidence we probably have is the closeness of Paul's letters or Paul's writings to regarding Jesus as a historical character. And I think, for me, that's compelling that there was somebody around at that time, because the earliest of Paul's writings were only literally a few years after Jesus' death. And I think it's unlikely that was just completely fabricated. That there were so many people who believed in this guy at this time. And of course, from the same time, we have lots of early Christian sects as well. For me, there was somebody there. There was somebody there who fit this bill and who fit this character. Now, the narrative around this character differed in these different things, and people believed different things about him, and the kind of mythos that grew up about him took a lot longer to kind of become a coherent story. But for me, I don't think there's... I'd be very, very surprised if there wasn't a historical person, or at least historical people from a movement who were kind of talking about the stuff that it's reported that Jesus was talking about.
Yeah. And definitely, in part for me, I feel like us granting or just accepting that there probably was somebody, or again, a handful of people all kind of in the same area. Maybe they had the same name. It was a pretty common name, but yeah, accepting that, granting that in a discussion for me doesn't really feel like much, right? Because it's like that moment when we're granting to somebody. It's like, well, yeah, we absolutely accept that you had an experience. We're not saying you're just flat out lying to us. We think you had that experience where you walked down your hallway and then there was this thing there. You are attributing it to a ghost. And I'm just saying, I don't think it was a ghost. I think there's probably something else going on. But we both agree that that experience happened. That doesn't change anything about, what the attribution of it or the supernatural nature of it. But also, I will say that I think it's worthwhile. Again, if this is something that interests you, go look up what the historical Jesus scholars say. Go look up what the mythicist Jesus scholars say. And shake it out on your own terms, I think, because there is a lot of really, really good information out there. And you don't have to do it so that you can, push some narrative or win a point in an argument or something. You can just do it for the sake of learning stuff, man. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just being like, hey, this is a topic that interests me, and I'm just going to look further into it. I know there's a handful of great scholarship. I know Richard Carrier is one of the biggest people on the mythicist side. There's a whole bunch of people on the historical side. John Dominic Crossan, I think. Dale C. Allison. There's a bunch of them, man. So definitely. But yeah, give us some of your thoughts on this, Evan.
Well, I wanted to ask about that specifically. That's kind of where I see some like drama brewing. Is like there's like almost this tendency to call mythicists conspiracy theorists, and I've been saying in comment sections, which take it with a grain of salt, is like, you're almost as bad as a climate denialist. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know about all that, but
yeah, I can definitely say, Evan, I'm a fan of us not attributing bad motives to each other. Right? Like I agree with you that's definitely not, and I don't think that's what we have to do, right? Like, I have friends that are mythicists. I have friends that take a historical side, and honestly, at the end of the day, I just don't really know because I've never looked into it super hard. And if, if the consensus of scholarship is going to say, yeah, it probably was a guy, I'll take that. If somebody says, well, that's a lazy position, SR. Yeah, kind of it is. Yeah, kind of it is. I accept that. I'm not,
I've got a question for you, Evan, if you don't mind. If we somehow,
No,
if something turned up, if we found some kind of compelling evidence tomorrow that said that there was definitely a man called Jesus who preached these things, would that kind of affect your opinion on the whole God question, or whether Jesus was God, or the standard Christian ideas around Jesus? Or would you just look at it as an interesting historical fact that has come to light?
It's a great question.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Yeah. I don't think I would be personally moved towards it, because I do like the historicist like perspective, where they say sort of like maybe draw a line at like the resurrection and like certain miracles like walking on water. Even if I were to grant, like for the sake of conversation, that there was a historical Jesus, just go ahead and but that doesn't get us any closer to the miracles or the the supernatural claims. So.
Right. And it doesn't, and I think also, in addition to that, it doesn't lessen the terrible, harmful part of the message either, right? Like, there's this old, ancient Greek philosopher, Hypatia of Alexandria. Don't know if you ever heard of her or not. It doesn't matter, honestly. It's just that there's a lot of things that are attributed to this person that are like really, really cool. Like, it's some really good stuff. But when we go look through the historical evidence, there may not actually have been this singular person that we're attributing it all to, but who cares?
Right.
Because it doesn't change the, lack of harm or overall positive benefit of the message. Exactly like you and Richard were just saying, like, if we found something tomorrow that said there definitely was this guy named Jesus, he definitely had a mother named Mary and a father named Joseph, and there was like questions about his birth, like, great. That doesn't change the fact that Jesus at some point was like, hey, slaves, obey your masters. Like, that doesn't make any of that less harmful, And on the flip side, if we just absolutely found out tomorrow, like, no Jesus whatsoever, totally freaking made up from the beginning, well, that doesn't make any of the positive things any less, right? The whole, hey, be nice to people. Yeah, that doesn't change. I mean, that wasn't unique or special to Christianity or anything Jesus said. But at the same time, is it there? Yeah, technically. Okay. Whether he's real or not, slaves shouldn't obey their masters, and we still should be nice to people. Like,
good point.
Well, any other thoughts for us, Evan?
Well, that was about it. It was the drama, and then like but that's kind of niche. That's very niche. And then
for sure.
You're right. It doesn't really change too much, and we can just keep on debating. So thank you both for your time.
Awesome,
thank
Evan.
you.
Well, you have a great rest of your day, and definitely give us a call back in the future, or hang out with us and stuff. And yeah, I kind of feel like wherever we come down on this, historical Jesus, mythicist Jesus, for me, at the end of the day, we're pretty much on the same side. And oftentimes I find, what we're asking for and what we're pushing for is that critical thinking, that secular humanism, separation of religion and government, normalizing atheism. I mean, if we're doing that, I honestly don't care either way. If you're like, hey, Elliot, all those other things are really good, I'm with you, man. But before we grab one of these other calls, and just a reminder, folks, we do still have open lines. So now's a good time to call in, because you'll just get me and Richard. We're totally unprepared for the best God arguments right now. We could very easily convert by the end of this episode, but not if you don't call in, theists. But that being said, if you do shop on Amazon, whether you call the show or not today, you can actually support the ACA at no extra cost to you, because you can just go visit tiny.cc/Amazon Smile ACA, and you can designate the atheist community of Austin as your selected charity, and Amazon will donate a portion of their profit to the ACA directly. How cool is that, y'all? You don't have to do anything extra at all. But if you do want to do something extra, where we have a place for you, because we got merch. We got the merch. We got it all. We got all the things you want, all the things you need. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs, limited edition T-shirts, all kinds of crazy, awesome stuff. tiny.cc/merch ACA, and you can get all that ACA merchandise. I've heard there's a limited edition thing that happens every month and it disappears and you may never get a chance to get it again. So you have to go check out tiny.cc/merch ACA. I'm just saying. Also, if you really don't want to look at fish and chips the whole time that you're listening to Richard and I yap, you can actually go to this cool little channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. So it's tiny.cc/AEN podcast. We won't be upset. We understand. Some people just don't like fish and chips. They're fries. They're not actually chips, you guys. They're fries. But if you don't want to have to even worry about seeing it, it's just tiny.cc/AEN podcast. So easy peasy. You can also become a member of the Talk Heathen. I love that Richard's disappointed when you said fries. Okay, so you can become a member of the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at tiny.cc/FBTHD. A great place to talk about whether you think Jesus was a myth, Jesus is historical, or whether or not they're called French fries. And also, in case you didn't know, Talk Heathen has a TikTok, and we will be going live there before the shows on Sunday. I tried to, but apparently I'm just not technologically advanced. Like I really struggle with computers, guys. If it wasn't for the crew, honestly, I would never be here. So anyway, go subscribe and join that in the pre-show for the Talk Heathen TikTok, because we got to get up to like 1,000 followers before we can go live. And then you can see me just stumble around there and just be like, hey, are we on? Is this right? Are we good? It was kind of like that this morning. Richard made fun of me too. It hurt. I cried. I'm good though. I'm fine. I'm good. I promise. Richard, do you want to go to another call? You want to go to another call?
After I've berated you for calling chips fries, yeah.
After the show. I know. It'll come. I'll hear it. Let's talk about rituals. We're gonna talk with Gabriel, him in Canada. If I can click the thing, but again, really just bad with technology. But hey, Gabriel, you're on with Secular Rarity and Richard Gilliver. What's up?
Hi guys, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. It's quite cold here in Canada. We just have quite a storm and cold temperatures. Yeah, but I'm fine.
Good. Hopefully you are staying warm and safe.
Yep, I am. Thank you.
Well, yeah, what you got for us today? It sounds like you want to talk about rituals?
Yes. So my question is about if we as humans, even as atheists, as secularists, we need rituals in our life. And I'm not talking about a routine, because a routine, I think, is quite different, like brushing your teeth and all of that. That's not ritual. I'm talking more ceremonies with other peoples, maybe, or I guess you could call prayer, but it could be meditation, maybe at night before going to bed, meditate on your day, on your week, etc. Do you think that this is a ritual, and do we need it?
Yeah, definitely. I know, Richard, you've got a little bit of knowledge on some rituals and stuff. You're fairly knowledgeable on some of this. What are your thoughts?
I've meditated for probably 20 years plus. So, yeah, but I don't know whether I wouldn't view meditation as a ritual personally, but people do use things like that as ritual. My field of study is religious studies. And I know you said you didn't want to talk about this, but we would actually, in religious studies, we would look at daily routines as ritual. And I think if we are looking at where rituals come from and why people do them, part of that is because of daily routines. Some people have rituals that they'll double check the doors to make sure they're locked. These can realistically be called rituals. These are things that people do to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel grounded and present, and people do them. And it might be something as basic as that. When it comes to kind of these rituals that people do that might be meditation, might be prayer, might be whatever, that are more supernaturally based or seen as more supernaturally based, I think everybody has an aspect of that. I think people like to kind of, like I say, feel grounded. And I don't think I wouldn't criticize people for doing that. I think it all depends on how you're approaching it, and whether you're approaching it from the perspective of it being simply as a ritual that makes you feel comfortable, or whether you're suspending kind of skepticism and doing it and attributing things to it. I know that I've got friends who are secular, they don't believe in gods and things, but they have little altars. And they might have statues of like witch statues, pagan gods and goddesses, and they don't actually believe they exist, but it helps ground them and make them feel better. Again, that's not something I would do, but it helps these people do things, and there's no supernatural kind of attribution towards it whatsoever. There are other people who do exactly the same thing and do believe that they're real things. And I think that point, that disconnect there is the point where I would start, asking questions around people. If people are saying, yeah, I do this daily ritual, I do believe there's some supernatural entity which is important for me and it's giving me power to get through the day, that's when I would start asking questions around that. Daily rituals, for me personally, no problem, but everybody's different. Some people might see a normal daily ritual in that vein as too far, but atheism is a great thing where we have lots of different opinions within it. What one person A says, person B might disagree with. The only thing we share in common is that we don't believe in a god.
And what about societies at large? Do you think societies have rituals? I see in the comments like weddings and promotions and all of that. Sure. Do you think we should have other more ceremonial rituals as secularists, as atheists?
So where my thoughts come down on this is that oftentimes when we think about various religions, there are three facets that seem to show up a lot, not 100%, but a lot of times it's like there's some rituals that are involved, right? Like there's like a set of beliefs generally, and then there's like this supernatural element, right? And my issue is with the supernatural and the set of beliefs. My issue isn't with, for instance, the Hindu festival of Holi, where everybody gets together and it's real colorful and they dance a lot and they sing a lot and they eat a bunch of good food and they do all these fun things. And I think all of that is amazing. I think all of that is great. The idea of a bunch of people getting together and singing the same song and, hands in the air, pumping fists and all that good stuff. Like, yeah, I think all of that is awesome. And so when it comes to either individually or societally, I think, heck yeah, let's keep these rituals, because a lot of times we can show in a totally secular, totally scientific manner, just doing some of these things is really good for us. There's something about us as people that when we all kind of get together for a common purpose, even if it's just something as simple as going to fly kites, right? Or just cloud watching, like there are really, really active, successful, and super, super happy stamp collecting groups out there. Now, I'm not a part of them. Stamp collecting isn't the thing for me, but some people really love doing it. And one of their like rituals or routines, if you will, they get together every Thursday and they do something and they talk about, various things. Or I've been a part of a gem and mineral club for years where, once a month somebody comes in and says, here's what I do. Here's what I work with. A lady makes scrimshaw. Her husband makes knife blades. Like, it's awesome. It's super cool. And we can just all get together and we have a little food and we drink a little, grape juice or whatever. And we hang out and awesome. The problem for me is exactly where, Richard was kind of laying it out a second ago too, is just that that supernatural element, that kind of prescribed set of beliefs or something. We're all kind of, I feel like, a little superstitious, but that gets to some really harmful places sometimes, right? When we don't have good grounding to believe that something is true. So that's the issue. But if the ritual is we all get together every Wednesday and we light some candles and we sing Kumbaya once or twice and then we all hug and go home, that's awesome. I don't see anything problematic with that, you know.
And rituals change as well. I mean, if you have a look at weddings as an example of rituals, which I mentioned earlier on, you know, there's a lot of people now who will opt for a civil partnership instead of a wedding. And we can see that they want to take that religious element out of it, or if you can have secular weddings as well, where there's no kind of religious involvement whatsoever. And people need to, people do that. And we can see that changing as a society. We can see that trend changing as a society, and people still want the ritual element of it. They still want that ritual and that aspect of committing themselves to each other and be seen to committing themselves to each other. But the method of how they go about that is changing.
Yeah, I see. Well, thank you for your answers, and have a great day, a great rest of the show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much,
you for your call, Gabriel.
We appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in those types of rituals that you're kind of talking about, Richard, and not just in the like being able to look back through like a historical or you know, sociological, anthropological type thing, right? But just there is something to us kind of, you know, congregating and like all being involved in the same thing, you know. There's something about us just hanging out together. We seem to like that as people. I'm not 100% sure where that comes from, but
I found it very interesting when you brought up meditation, actually, because I've been meditating a long time and I've never ever considered it a ritual. I've never considered it from that kind of aspect, from something that I should do at the same time and something I should do kind of religiously, if you like. It's all been very practical from the way I look at it.
I wonder, do you go through like a similar process and when getting ready or like finishing, like do you always, you know, maybe put on the same kind of, you know, robe, or you light a certain candle?
No, I'm very simplistic. I just sit down and do it. In fact, I'm kind of at that. I don't want to say stage because it sounds like there's like stages to go through, and there isn't. But I'm quite happy meditating, just walking around. I can walk around and kind of get into that kind of mind frame. But I've been doing it a long time. I think that's kind of. But that's for a different day. That's another story.
Yeah, that is interesting though. And again, like I was kind of mentioning, there are some actual there are some studies out there that do seem to indicate that, you know, being engaged in these kind of things is something beneficial for us. You know, we've shown people can have these, you know, religious experiences, whether they're in church or at a, you know, at a cool concert or you know, a soccer game or something. Richard's probably shaking his head because I said soccer instead of football. But that's actually, you know, that's good that we brought that up, because we actually have a chat poll, I think, today in the live chat that's about, you know, whether or not, you know, science disproves God, or is it can science prove God? Or you know, honestly, I haven't seen a single scientific thing that indicates God at all, Richard. I don't know if you have, but I am completely unconvinced by all of that. So hopefully there is somebody out there that has some good scientific evidence for us and would like to present it today, because I mean, Richard, are you open to changing your mind, or are you?
Yeah, I'm very.
Okay.
So in fact,
Okay.
one of the things I talking about science and proving God is, or evidencing God, is one of the, when I'm talking to religious people, one of the things that gets thrown at me a lot is that, you know, well, the problem with atheists is that they'll only take scientific evidence and they're not interested in anything else, and that's just not true. I'm quite open to philosophical proofs that demonstrate God to exist. I think, you know, you can't straw man people by just simply stating what evidence they'll accept. You know, let's start from a mutual position where we're talking to each other and, you know, and listening to each other and want to know what the other person thinks rather than stating what the other person thinks.
I think that is a great way to engage in these conversations. And I just got word, folks, from our wonderful crew that 3% of our respondents in the chat poll today say, yes, science can prove God. So definitely, Richard and I want to hear from you. If you have some scientific evidence, if you've got a paper or some video or whatever the heck it is, we want to talk about it. So, and we will absolutely listen to you and get your point. But again, I don't know, Richard. I'm on the not believing side right now. I am. So it's gonna have to be some good proof. So I'm sure there's somebody out there that's up to the task. But before we grab our next lovely caller, I have to remind you all that today, right after this lovely show is over, the flagship show. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Richard. The flagship show of the ACA.
A little bit familiar with it. Yeah.
The nonprofits, right? So the nonprofits, the flagship show of the ACA, will be airing their newest episode live at 3 p.m. Central today at tiny.cc/YTNP. I've also been told before that if you just hang out in this channel until that time, it'll just automatically direct you. So I think both works. But yes, that will be happening at 3 p.m. Central Time today. Richard, do you remember the name of that flagship show the ACA is?
Non-profits. That sounds right. That
sounds right. So definitely go check that out, folks. And also, we want you to know what is going on in our community here at the ACA. And for that, we have an updated website. So go over to www.atheist-community.org. You can learn about the organization itself, its policies, and how you can get involved. There was actually a really cool little ad at the beginning of this that talked about we're looking for some more people to get involved. So come do that, folks. It is a good time. I don't know. It's kind of a ritual. For us. Anyway, we also want to hear from you. We want to know what you liked. We want to know what you thought was effective, whether we should have had better hosts today. More importantly, what can we do better in general? So go ahead and email us at tv@atheist-community.org. And you can tell us everything that you want us to hear. So we do have people reading those emails. We look at the comments and stuff. So definitely reach out to us, folks. We love to hear from you. And before we grab this next awesome caller, I need a break. We're probably going to go grab a snack, Richard. I'm going to get some French fries. I don't know what you're getting. I'm going to go get some French fries and watch some soccer with my chips. I'm just frustrating him all the way down, but we're gonna give you a quick break because we know sometimes that you're busy throughout the week and you don't get to watch all the other great shows other than Talk Heathen, like Nonprofit, Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, and the Atheist Experience. We get it, folks, but that's okay. We took care of it for you, and we've got these little clips. So check these clips out and then go back and watch the shows after this.
Like, is there a swimsuit competition? I know it's not Miss Universe.
Like 4 days of amazing gay leather pageantry.
Yes.
And I'm talking like down home Texas pageant. Plus bear, plus gay.
And they were trying to reconcile modern quantum physics with Eastern mysticism. Okay. And they did a really good job of it, right? I mean, it was all bull, right?
Wait, so why did they do a good job of it?
Because they made it sound reasonable.
Okay.
So, in our second segment, just like Richard said, we're going to be traveling down to 1950. I'm hearing from our producers it's actually Florida in 2023. Hard to tell the difference, my bad.
And they have to be match up perfectly.
Okay.
And when I'm looking at those two things, they match up perfectly.
Wow, that's great. Well, that's wonderful. I think you should tell NASA and then come back to us.
I'm not telling anybody.
But
you're telling
why are you
us?
telling us?
Thanks, Mark.
Well, guys.
Talk to you later. Bye. He called me young.
I wasn't going to say really young. Can you provide some evidence of that claim? Because I don't see...
I'm muted, so nobody heard that. That's okay, because I'll say it again, because I am contractually obligated to say it, which is, if you can arrange to be in the Austin area between February 23rd and the 26th, consider joining us in the studio audience at the ACA Free Thought Library for live broadcasts of Secular Sexuality, The Truth Wanted, Talk Heathen, and The Atheist Experience. The doors will open at 6 p.m. on Thursday and Friday and noon on Sunday. Parking is where you can find a legal spot, but I have been told there are lots of places to park. That is after the lot is full. And if you can't make it out there this month, that's okay, because at the end of each month, the last week of each month, we will continue to broadcast live from the library. So keep watching this show. Go check out the website for all the news and info as we expand the in-studio offerings in the future. And finally,
that's exactly what you get when you start calling chips fries. You start making rookie mistakes like muting yourself.
I like that you're attributing it to that and not like a supernatural thing, because that sounds much more real to me, honestly. I'm glad, I'm more convinced of that. But speaking of being in the local Austin area, if you do live in Austin or are Austin adjacent, we are in great need of additional crew members for the show. And if you're interested in assisting with video, audio, or call screening, you can attend our live studio shows. Please email us at tv@atheist-community.org, and the production team will be in touch. And then you too, one day, can make fun of me gently, but, you know, still make fun of me and say things like, dude, you're muted. Why are you muted? Seriously, man, you're muted. Pay attention. Yeah, you can say stuff like that to me, because that's what our awesome crew does. But that being said, we have some other good calls. I think we're going to go to Colorado. Daniel, he, him. It sounds like you want to talk about the events of Exodus. Daniel, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. You're talking with Richard Gilliver and Secular Rarity. What do you want to talk about Exodus today?
Well, what I believe is that Jesus was the Savior and died for our sins.
What does that have to do with Exodus? Do you want to talk about Exodus, or do you just want to talk about like Jesus? It's fine either way. It's just that it looks like you told our call screener Exodus.
Well, it's all the same thing.
I think Exodus was a different event than the birth and death and resurrection of Jesus. I could be wrong on that. It's been a while since I've been to church. But again, honestly, Daniel, we're open to hearing what you want to talk about. It's just that we were thinking you were going to talk about the events of Exodus. But if you'd rather talk about the death and resurrection of Jesus, like, we're cool with that. We're comfortable with that. Just what would you like to talk about? Oh, well, we dropped. Well, that's okay. Real quick though, just because I mean, like, I just, now it's in my head. Richard, could you give me like your quick thoughts on the Exodus? You got a feeling about it, or
the Old Testament? There was a great book written by Israel Finkelstein, I think it was, that kind of goes into this. And I think the thing is, when you kind of look back over the last couple of 100 years, 200-300 years, there was a great kind of movement during the Enlightenment, the late Enlightenment, where people were going out to prove. They wanted to prove the Bible was true. These scientists, these archaeologists were going out there trying to prove these events. And the evidence just didn't turn up. And that was a great period of kind of thought. And that started changing people's minds. The academics at the time were all very, very Christian. And they were going out there trying to prove things. And they were thinking, damn, where's this evidence actually at? It's not here. And of course, it didn't stop them believing, but it did cast doubt. And it was a great period for kind of scholarship, for not quite biblical scholarship, because we didn't quite have that yet as a discipline. But it certainly paved the way for Old Testament scholarship in a great way. Yeah. There's a great book that is called, I think it's something along the lines of an old book, 100 Years of Old Testament Scholarship. And it goes through the kind of periods and of scholarship during that time, and it's fantastic. And yeah, I think we evidence for the Exodus is not there. It's a very, very interesting subject. It's something it's a very specialist subject, and it's good. I highly, highly recommend people go and look at some of the scholarship in that.
Yeah.
If you're a believer, go and have a look at that stuff, because I think it'll open your eyes to a lot of things. Scholarship in general will open your eyes to a lot of things, especially if you're a believer who's come from the background of kind of just listening to the pulpit, listening to your preacher in the pulpit, or especially if you listen to apologists who speak, some of these really bad apologists out there who kind of have they've done the kind of, they know the scholarship and they kind of ignore it to push their own agenda. And I think go and have a look at the actual scholarship, and it might not stop you believing, and that's fair enough. Nobody's here trying to force you not to believe anymore. But to get a better understanding of it, I think it's really, really important.
I agree. And I remember years ago, the first time I'd ever come across like this discussion, it was a video of Dr. Francesca Stavrakopoulou, and it's just like it's like 5 or 10 questions in all about a minute time, and the host goes, all right, so like lightning round, and he's like, okay, so tell me if this person existed or this thing happened. Abraham and Isaac, no. Moses, no. The Exodus, no. The 10 Commandments on the tablets, no. And it was just every single time, it was just, she was so quick about it. Just no. So yeah, definitely a lot of great evidence. Also, we still have time, folks. We still have time. Maybe you want to present evidence that proves the Exodus and shows that Richard and I are just, bumbling idiots who don't know a single thing. You can embarrass us right here, right now, just by calling 512-991-9242 and providing some evidence of the Exodus. But you don't have to, because I still don't think it's there. But anyway, we are going to go out to the lovely state of Texas. Man, wow. Did I say that? That was weird. We're going out to Texas either way. Gabe, him, wants to ask us some questions about how to have a conversation with some conservative parents, it sounds like. How are you, Gabe?
How are you? Hello?
Yeah. Hey, can you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, yeah, you were chatting it up with Secular Rarity and Richard Gilliver. What do you want to talk about?
I have 2 conservative parents. They're actually from Mexico. And I feel like sometimes, Catholicism has fucked us over, because there's, like, for example, topics that, even though my parents are doctors, they sometimes cling to religion, even though they're not supposed to cling to religion. And, I just wanted just some tips how I can speak to them about being atheist, because, some of the literature that they read, they're very, they talk a lot really bad about the Catholic Church in Mexico. So I feel like they're on the fence from not being Catholic to being atheist. So, I don't know how I can speak to them about that.
Yeah.
When I said I was atheist myself, it was actually very brutal when I came out atheist. I had a lot of problems with them because of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of us here that can relate to that. I'll give some quick thoughts, and I'll pass it over to you, Richard. One thing that comes to my mind a lot whenever this kind of conversation is approached, I remember something that Dr. Darrell Ray said a long time ago, and it was like somebody had asked him kind of a similar thing, and his response was in the vein of like, well, what's your goal? Why do you want to have this conversation with the person? Because if at the end of the day, really where you're coming from is to try and force somebody to change their position, or to try to, get the right tactic or the gotcha question or answer right to like win one over or something, that probably isn't the best motivation, right? From our parts as the ones that want to engage. And something Richard had said earlier in this show was about, you know, let's be charitable to each other. Let's have these conversations calmly and listen to the other side and genuinely try and understand. And I think a lot of times we do end up making more progress that way. It may not always feel like it, and it may sometimes feel like this particular discussion was a complete and total waste of time because we talked about it for 40 minutes and then we went all the way back to the beginning, and oh my gosh, I think, you know, most of us have been in a conversation like that once or twice before. But I think there's great value in at least demonstrating to those other interlocutors that you really are interested in a conversation. You're not interested in trying to demonize the other person's views or just shut down the conversation or anything. You honestly want to know where they're coming from and think about it from the perspective of walking with them through this stuff, right? As opposed to saying, hey, here's a recipe, make the recipe, right? Anybody should be able to read and follow the recipe. Instead of doing that, we do it together and we say, okay, well, first step is we crack 2 eggs. Well, great. Let's grab the eggs. I crack 1, you crack 1. And that kind of collaborative process, I think, is something that, again, maybe doesn't always result in that answer of, hey, I no longer believe anymore, and now I'm all rational and skeptical about everything. Yay. But I think oftentimes what it does is it indicates that we're willing to have these conversations. And in those more difficult moments, we might be someone that person turns to and is comfortable enough to say, hey, I am having doubts about this. I am having questions about this. But yeah, Richard, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you kind of shake out?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think I'm very interested, Gabe. Where are you at in your kind of, because you said you were a Catholic yourself, and where are you at in your kind of your journey? Are you at the have you kind of got over the angry atheist stage if you had one? and are these conversations important to have with your parents to you?
They are, because, you know, I feel like, you know, some of the topics that my parents, you know, they have, like, for example, they don't talk to me about sex because they're very afraid of talking to me about that. And I feel that it has to do a lot with them being conservative Catholics. So, you know, I'm 32 years old and they still never talk to me about sex, even though they're medical doctors themselves.
Yeah, so is it something that you want to kind of pursue these conversations then with them, and are they interested in having them? Is another thing, because obviously you don't want to just walk up to them and approach them and kind of sound like you're firing off at them every time you come into contact with them. You know, is it something that your parents are open to doing, having these conversations?
I'm not completely sure, because even if I have that type of conversation, since, you know, they're both medical doctors, they kind of have like the, you know, that kind of like the cold shoulder, like the chip on the shoulder, like, oh, you're not a doctor, so, you know, I understand these things more than you. They have that type of mentality sometimes.
Yeah, that can be difficult. Especially, I mean, Catholicism's a very ritualistic tradition as well, and I think that sometimes if someone does go into the medical profession or one of those professions from that, they kind of apply the kind of the standards of that strict medical training to that ritual and kind of conflate them. Sometimes I think there's a danger of them doing that and conflating the kind of religious belief as with the medicine and with the science that they've learned, and as though that they're somehow one and the same thing. So do you have any other outlets for these kind of conversations? If you like having these conversations, and, you know, we're here, we like having these conversations. If you like having these conversations, do you have outlets where you can go other than your parents and speak to people? Or do you have non-religious friends you can speak to, or even friends from different religious traditions that you can have these conversations with?
Yes, I do. I do have other people that are atheists, or they're closet atheists. Like I was, for example, a closet atheist. I never really believed in Catholicism, but, you know, just to please my parents, just to please everybody in society next to me, you know, I just couldn't. there was no such thing as being atheist where I came from. So I just, played it along with it throughout most of my life until finally, when I went to college and I took an English course with this professor that was very, that would talk very, very bad about religion, specifically Christianity. That's when, he made me feel okay. Okay, you know what? It's actually very okay to be an atheist.
Yeah, that's good. And again, I think that alone is such a powerful thing that we often take for granted in a lot of different facets of life, right? Like if somebody came up to me tomorrow and was just like, hey, I want you to meet, a good friend of mine. This is Bill. I'd be like, oh, great. Hey, Bill, tell me about yourself. And he's like, oh, I don't collect stamps. I'd be like, oh, yeah, cool. Great, man. Awesome. Because it's normal. It's a normal thing, right? If Bill came up to me and said, hey, I'm a Christian, it'd be like, oh, cool. Because again, it feels normal to us. But there's still that hurdle to get over a lot of time with, non-belief, with atheism, with agnosticism, with these types of stances. And again, that's where I think the value of just being able to engage in these conversations where you can have this respectful pushback and this disagreement, but in a way that's clear that you're valuing the other interlocutor, right? Because that alone, I think, really helps to normalize it. It really helps to just show, hey, we're the same. We're just people, like I wake up in the morning and put my pants on, one leg at a time, except for Saturdays when I hang them and then jump right into them. It's a thing. It's a ritual I do. It's a long story, but anyway, like, yeah, it's good to just show people, hey, we're normal people and we can just have these conversations and, we don't have to hate each other at the end. But yeah, Richard, any other thoughts?
Like that.
Sorry, Gabe, go on.
No, I didn't have any more comments.
Okay.
Do you have a topic that I could probably speak to them about? Because I don't know if I should go through like slavery,
Yeah, Richard, do you have a thought on
slavery?
A topic or
speak to them about at the beginning?
I don't. Rather than a specific topic, I think we've got to be very careful that if someone's kind of in that place, not to kind of attack them, especially if it's someone you love and there's somebody who's a family or a friend. You don't want to go and have them feel like you're attacking them and having them feel like you're attacking their specific beliefs. And so I think the way I'd approach this is by either talking about religion as a whole rather than Catholicism. Let's not speak about Catholicism. Let's talk about religion in general. Introduce Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and talk about religion in general and ask for their opinions on other religions. So you're not attacking them. You're asking for their opinion. You're asking for their insights on things. Yeah, Gabe, please respond.
Okay, because I've seen them talk bad about other religions, like Jehovah's Witnesses. So usually, I think that's a very good way to jump in and start talking about it. But I don't know how I can talk to them without talking bad about Catholicism.
Well, one thing is
like I said too, they do read literature that talks bad about Catholicism, like in Mexico and everything. Really brutal too.
Yeah. One thing I enjoy doing, and this is going along with kind of what Richard was saying, is I'm a big fan of comparing things between religions, right? Because whenever we're raised in a particular religious culture, right, or particular ideology, oftentimes the things that are really fantastical and a bit absurd in our story, in our cultural history, well, they sound completely normal and natural, right? But then when we hear almost exactly word for word another story from a different culture, we can write it off so easily. We can say, well, of course we know that didn't happen in India. Of course we know that didn't happen in Russia. Of course we know this. But for some reason, we take ours as being so much more invested in truth. And it's just because we've been accustomed to it. And so, yeah, just saying like, hey, did you know about this religion or this cultural thing? Did you know about this supernatural claim or thing from history? Like, what do you think about that? Do you think that thing is true? There's lots of stories in Hinduism about all kinds of incredible things that blow the Bible out of the water, okay? Just bring up a few of those and just be like, do you really think there was some God like on a spaceship flying around above these people or stuff? And then see what they say. And then when they say, well, no, I don't think that's real. You can go, oh, well, we've actually got corroboration from these other, texts around the time. And they go, well, that doesn't mean it's true. And you go, that's a good point. It doesn't mean it's true just because other people wrote stuff down somewhere around then. I wonder if there's anything in Catholicism that could be similar to that, right? I love that approach, Gabe.
Very good.
Yeah, and on a similar vein, you can introduce skepticism again without directly attacking the religion. Right. Speak about skepticism, especially if from a scientific background, because they're already going to be familiar with the methodology of kind of the skeptic process, and try and get a way for them to apply that they already do, that methodology they already have, to religion, rather than keeping it separate. Because a lot of time what we find with religious people who are scientists is that they conflate the methodology and the evidence with opinion. And you'll hear this all the time. Is if you speak to religious people yourself, you'll probably hear it yourself, where you get people saying, yes, but this scientist is also a Christian. So and it's almost like there's a conflation going off, that because they're a scientist and they're a Christian, that therefore there is evidence for Christianity. And I think if you kind of apply skepticism again without attacking the religion while you're doing so, you can kind of get those cogs going round in the brain, so they don't associate the methodology of the science with evidence for the belief just because they believe. And these are all good little kind of methods you can use just to try and get the conversation going. Again, you don't have to be there trying to convince them of anything. Just get them thinking. Let them do the thinking for themselves.
Right.
Okay.
That's
I
huge.
told my dad he's like a really big fan of Carl Sagan. He has like all his videos. Like he had like a show, I think, and like he has all the videos. So a way I wanted to attack him is, what does he believe in? Why does he believe that and not yours? But that sounded a little bit more brutal than your method. I like your method.
Yeah, I mean, if your dad's a fan of Carl Sagan and is not already read the book, get him to read The Demon Haunted World, because that's a fantastic book about skepticism. And again, it's something that doesn't directly go out and attack religion. It's something that talks about the methodology and critical thinking. And it's a really, really good book to kind of get someone who's maybe new to skepticism as an idea to apply to themselves.
Yeah. And I think
what's the name of the book? Demon Haunted World.
A Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. And if he's a fan of Carl Sagan, and I'm sure he'll be really happy to read it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, he will.
And I think a lot of the things Richard has been bringing up is really, really valuable, because we do as people sometimes get our guards up, whenever somebody comes back. And like when I say fries instead of chips, I can't have a conversation with Richard because he just won't listen to anything that I say afterwards. But, doing that approach where you kind of, take a step back or maybe 2 steps back and you look at it from a broader perspective can be really, really helpful for people, because it just doesn't raise those guards as much, because it doesn't feel like the other person is coming at you and saying what you believe is dumb and blah, blah. And, that's not a good method. It's not a good way for us to actually dialogue with each other. And it's a skill too. So don't beat yourself up about it, Gabe. It's not something that you just wake up tomorrow and you're just fantastic at having these, difficult types of conversations, especially with close relatives or loved ones, right? Those are always the people that it's really hard, because there is that emotional connection there. But I think oftentimes if we come at it from that perspective of letting people know, like, hey, like, I care about you, and I want to honestly engage in this conversation. David McCraney, I think, recently finished up his book about like how to have difficult conversations or change minds or something. David McCraney is a very interesting guy that has a lot of incredible stuff out there. Go look him up. I'm sure he has some stuff on how to have these kinds of hard conversations. So, but yeah, hopefully
David
McCraney, like MC and then Crane with a Y. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. CRANE. Okay. Yeah, go check that out, Gabe. And honestly, I mean, give us a call back in the future and let us know how the talk went and so forth. We'd love to hear that. So maybe you find out something that can be helpful for other people.
Very, very helpful.
Sweet. Well, sweet, Gabe. Well, we appreciate you, and we will let you go. And again, yeah, touch base with us in the future and say, how it went, and let us know if there's some pitfalls to avoid or some really helpful things we can shout out to the rest of the people out there with us. So speaking of shout outs, Richard, did you know that it's time to announce the top 5 patrons of the week?
Top 5 patrons of the
That's
week.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
They would be Eric
You have
Tweet.
them? Yes. Number
Dingleberry
1.
Jackson.
Number 2.
Ayame.
Number 3.
Devar Valgin.
That's 4.
Which I've probably crucified their name, and I do apologize. Kaleve Helvete. Oh, I do like that name a whole lot.
It's a great name.
And an honourable mention to David S. Ward.
That's 6, folks. You see
6.
that? We tell
excel.
you every week. We tell you we're going to read out the top 5 patrons, and we actually read out 20% more than that. We read out one whole extra person. If that isn't worth a like, I don't know what to do at this point, Richard. Like, you should be definitely liking the video at this point. I mean, ridiculous. Anyway, we have another call. So let's go out to Ohio. Nate, he, him. I think it sounds like you had an experience with some Reiki healing or something. Nate, tell us what was that like?
It was really, really weird, guys. I am a hardcore skeptic atheist, and my mom, who's a fundigelical, decided that it would be wonderful for me, because I have very bad back pain, to get me a Reiki session. She thinks it's all Jesus doing it. So that was for Christmas, and I rolled my eyes something fierce. So it was bad. I said, fine, I'll do it, because she bought me the thing. Right. And so I went and I laid there while this woman did her woo bullshit. And after a while, something strange started happening. My foot started getting really warm, and then it got hot, and it felt like a spear shot through my leg. And I didn't know what the hell that was. I looked down to see what the hell was going on, because it hurt. And she was about 4 feet away from me with her palm outstretched, and I freaked out, because I never thought any of this stuff was real at all. She said, oh, that hurts, I'll back off. And she backed off another 2 feet with her palm outstretched. And I came away from that and did not have back pain, since. It took, this was not last Christmas, it was 2 Christmases ago. It took about 4 months for me to experience any back pain again. And I don't know what the hell that was. Now, I don't think y'all are going to know what the hell that was either, but I would like to have some sort of explanation or possible, theories as to what that was that I experienced. You guys have any clue what the hell is going on?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is this, which is there is a wonderful, wonderful regular host of this channel. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He's super cool. His name is Student Dr. Ben. He's like right about to be done with his whole medical training and stuff. He's been, anyway, general all around badass, this guy, Student Dr. Ben. So I know he will be on in the future.
And I love him.
I know in the future when he is on, he would absolutely love this call. So definitely make sure, no matter what Richard and I end up saying today, you definitely call back for him because he is actually the one who's knowledgeable. But Richard, what are your thoughts? What could that have been? How does it explain it?
I'm not a medical person, and I would say please call Ben, because I'm sure Ben would love to have this conversation with you. But something struck me about what you said. And I when you were talking, for me, you were already primed because you were going to this thing. You were already primed, and something that you said really, really struck me during what the story you were telling us, and that is that you said that you never had any back pain again afterwards, and then virtually immediately after that, you said it wasn't until a couple of months after that you had back pain again. So already this is telling me that you've got some kind of you've got some bias going off here within this. And if you were laying, and I'm sure you were relaxed while this was going off. You've got this kind of priming going off, and then if you feel something unusual. I'm wondering how much of that is your brain subconsciously telling you that something's working here, something's really, really good. I've been in a position before. I've been in the opposite position before, where I needed hand surgery, and a friend of mine wanted to do some acupuncture on me, and they were kind of, I don't want to use the word bullying, but they were being very persuasive about giving me this acupuncture for a few weeks. So I eventually caved, and I let them come and do this acupuncture. And I literally felt nothing. I felt there was no difference after the acupuncture. The only thing I felt different was the pain of them sticking needles into my wrist, which wasn't. But I was relaxed, but there was no kind of, because I'd been resistant for a long time to this, there was no priming, and it sounds like you had that priming going off, with your mum persuading you to go and everything. So I don't know. Go on.
I don't agree. Well, my priming was against it. I did not want to go. I thought it was nonsense. So I did it because she bought the thing, and I didn't want to dishonor her gift.
Yeah.
That's
fair.
Nate, if I can just kind of make sure I'm on the same page with you. You're asking kind of like what could be our best guess about why you felt that specific feeling when this individual was doing that particular action. Is that kind of what you're wondering about?
Yeah, I would like. Okay. I don't enjoy having woo in my worldview, and I would like to eliminate it.
So first off, just quick reminder, because we did actually get word. The wonderful Ben will be on next week, I think, on Talk Heathen. So definitely call back in for him for more in depth and stuff. Because I know he would just freaking enjoy the crap out of it. One thing that I'll say is, one of the things that we often forget about is how deeply connected our body is. And I know that's kind of weird, but like, I can tell you there are so many different times I have heard various medical experts talking about things where it's like somebody comes in and they say that their shoulder hurts, But what actually is the problem is something that's connected to the shoulder that is causing extra strain on it, right? And so, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, you have muscles that run from your legs to your back. You have nerves that run from your legs to your back, right? This is where the whole acupuncture and like some of that other, woo-woo nonsense comes in, because they go, well, obviously, if this nerve is connected to this part of the body, then that means the blah, blah. No, but if one of those is presenting with a problem, if you have inflammation, right, in some particular aspect of your body, right, well, it could be causing other things to feel uncomfortable. I know a friend of mine has, what is it? It's the one where you can't, celiac. And there's something to do with like the kind of like lining in her stomach. It like starts to get inflamed, but it doesn't feel to her like bloating or anything. It feels like somebody's punching her. And it's like, oh, the reason that is because of this other part of the body that's having this issue. So why did you potentially feel that in your leg? Well, if you're already having a nerve spasm, a muscle spasm or something, right? Let's say you've been laying on this table for 30 minutes now, and it's just caused it to stretch or relax a little. Well, it's possible that in that moment, it just made you feel something else somewhere else in the body because it's connected to that part of the body. And it was just a complete and total coincidence that this person was standing there doing that thing at that exact moment. I mean, how many other times throughout the session had this, healer, quote unquote, done that exact motion or done something else that you didn't feel jack from, We always have these weird pains and twitches in our body. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm just sitting completely still somewhere and my arm just kind of jumps. Like, I don't know why. That's just part of being a person. Like, our bodies kind of suck, and sometimes they just hurt, But seriously, I really would suggest, again, please next week call back, because I know student Dr. Ben would enjoy going through this, and it would be a really cool chance, just to kind of lay out some of that and how medical experts and people that are actually trained in these fields go about this. Because I get it, man. You're in that moment and you're like, this is really weird. And, I got my skeptic hat on and I got my little antennas up and I'm looking, but also this seems really weird. So it's nice to have a breakdown.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, definitely give us a call back.
Well, cool.
Give us a call back next week, Nate. I know Ben would enjoy the crap out of it. I'm not sure who's hosting with him, but anytime Ben's on is a good time. So, and I'm not just saying that because he paid me.
I'll call back and talk to him.
Awesome.
All right, cool.
Awesome, Nate.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, man. You have a great rest of your day. Yeah, I can definitely tell you that there's so many weird little things like that with the body that it's just like, oh, I got word. Blatant Blatheist, actually. That's cool. I love Blatant and Ben.
Yeah.
Those are two really, really good guys. I mean, we're cooler, Richard, but like, don't tell him I said that, okay? Like, just keep that between us.
No one's ever going to believe I'm cooler than anybody. You're not convincing anybody.
We're just not convinced. All right. Well, we have time, I think, for one more caller. We have Sven, any pronouns, is giving us a call from Washington and wants to talk about mathematics and abstract concepts. How are you, Sven?
Happy Sunday. I'm well. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. I think we have chatted once or twice before. We always seem to have some cool chats. What are you thinking about today? What's on your mind, Sven?
Awesome. So it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And Richard, I believe we've spoke before as well. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
But I was checking out The Mathematical Experience by Davis and Hirsch, and they were a quote kind of caught my eye that I thought I'd bounce off you guys, and that was that the working mathematician is a Platonist 6 days a week and a formalist on Sundays. And that just basically goes to show that, like, they don't care to discuss why they're working with abstract concepts as if they are real. And I kind of find that to be true of the materialist, like this, the sense we've talked before to just wash these away as nonsense ideas, but they are ideas that are allowing science to do its work.
Yeah, and I've had this similar discussion where basically a very devout religious person or somebody that's very engrossed in supernatural things has said to me something along like my response to something about like ghosts or something is like, well, we don't really have any good evidence for that. And normally the way that conversation goes is all the way back to these very most foundational things. And it's like, well, we don't actually have proof that the real world is out there. And it's like, yeah, I guess that's true. And it's like, well, you don't actually have any proof that your senses aren't constantly deceiving you. And it's like, yeah, I guess that's true. And it's like, okay, well, also we don't have like foundations for math or logic or anything. And it's like, yeah, all that's true. I grant all of that. I don't find that to be as big of a problem as other people do. Like the idea of math just being an abstract concept and not being like a physical thing, right? That doesn't bug me because I take the approach of it seems to be the case that we all have to deal with these 4 or 5 or 7 or 12 or there's a set of numbered things out there that we just don't really have good information or evidence for. And we may just never be able to. Like there may just never freaking ever be a way to prove that the outside world exists. Like this could all just definitely be a figment of my imagination. But the question is, do we all have to play that same hand? And if we do, if we're all in the same boat of saying, none of us have a good grounding for logic, none of us have a good grounding for any other minds existing, then as long as we don't add anything else on top of that, we're all playing the same game by the same rules. If we start adding things on top of that, that's where I think the problems come in. Because, hey, Elliot, you can't say you always need evidence for stuff. You can't say you always need scientific evidence because logic. Well, yeah, I agree. Do you have scientific evidence for logic? No. Okay. So then that's our one thing. That's the one thing that we're both allowed to just assume from the beginning and move on. Because if we don't, we can't make any progress. So once we've nailed down what those things are, then we can talk about adding those others where the soul or, a perfect form of things. I mean, all kinds of different aspects, Reiki, I guess. But I know I've been rambling. Richard, what are your thoughts on this? Math being abstract, how that relates to like materialism and stuff. Is this a problem?
It's not a problem. If you threw me off by jumping into odd solipsism because that's not somewhere I was going to go into.
I'm constantly unconvinced about your existence, Richard. I don't know why. I'm sorry.
I think yeah, for me, abstract concepts aren't a problem. I don't know why some kind of people who believe in the religious or the supernatural kind of think it is a problem. For people for atheists particularly, it's not a problem. For me, maths appears to work. Logic appears to work and you can test it. Math appears to work in the real world and we can test that math appears to work in the real world from the kind of the basic level of adding 2 + 2. You can take physical objects and put that into practice to see if that actually works. And yes, it appears to work down to the kind of the abstract level. And, when we come to abstract concepts, one of the kind of most difficult, even for mathematicians and logisticians, is infinity. And I think, even where that's concerned, it appears to work. In fact, when, I think it was Cantor who showed that many infinities could exist, and it actually caused such huge problems in the kind of ideas of thought, and not just in thought, but in physics and things like that. The constructivist mathematics was kind of defined exactly to control how infinities were used. And so even at the more complex levels, it appears to work. And I think, I don't see why anybody would have a problem with that at all. I find, why would anyone have an objection to abstract things being real or existing? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Sven?
Yeah, shout back to us.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned a game, secular, because there was talk of set theory and how our use of mathematics could be described as just rules of this universe. But to take that stance, you would have to accept that there are other universes that can obey other rules. And so if we ignore that, what's that?
No, I was just adding in, at least you would have to grant that it's a potential for other universes to have different rules. Like, yeah.
Correct. But until we have proof that these are just axiomatic rules that follow from this game that we call the universe, then I do not see why it is out of, I full hard agree. We always end up agreeing. We do need to use these rules. We need to play the same game. But I think the separation is that you are just we'll accept these 7 games and play the game. But the spiritualists and the theists are going to say, well, no, we want to understand why are there rules like that? And what does it mean to have those rules? Why would there be rules to a universe at all?
I'm glad you mentioned deists.
You asked about these rules.
Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned deists because when I've just brought up infinities a minute ago, and one thing that infinities is related to is quantum electrodynamics. And John D. Barrow, who's a science communicator and also a deist, he says it's the best theory in the whole of science. And I think that's something to take into account. We've got to be very careful when we have these conversations. Sometimes we might come from opposing opinions, but we've got to be very, very careful not to strawman people and put everybody into one category. There are some very, very good scientists who are deists and theists and understand the principles that we're talking about. And where they can strawman us, we can also strawman them. And I think it's very, very important not to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And just real quick, Sven, to kind of jump off, you had said, kind of this distinction with the spiritualist or the deist is coming more a little bit more of the angle of why are there these rules at all, for this game, this universe, right? This isn't anything scientific. This isn't anything mathematical or anything. But this is just what pops into my head when those thoughts come up is well, there has to be something. There has to be some kind of order of some kind, because otherwise complete and total chaos just isn't anything that we can really, it's kind of like the philosophical nothing. Like the broadest of concepts of complete chaos and randomness seems to not allow for anything, because if it's always going to be random at every single second, how do you ever have mass? How do you ever have, houses? The house will just disappear out of nowhere because there's no rules for logic or gravity or anything, right? It'll just disappear and be replaced with a unicorn or something. There has to be some kind of rule. Maybe it's not, maybe we don't understand it, or maybe there are ways that it can change and stuff, but it kind of makes sense to me that if there's going to be anything at all, there has to be at least some order, but again, I think these topics are fun topics to discuss, and I think they're good for us to clash on, because I think it does help us progress our scientific thought, and we look at different avenues and we say, well, maybe this or maybe that. Just a lot of times for claims, I'm gonna need to see something empirical in addition to some other thing. You want to give me a beautiful logical syllogism? I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm all here for it. But if that's it, if that's kind of where we end, then for me, it seems reasonable just to say, okay, well, logically that seems to work, but what's the demonstration of any of these premises in reality? And I get that for some people, that just isn't where they want to go. They just don't care if there is that demonstration. If it's logically valid, we're good to go. But yeah, I do enjoy these conversations. Richard, is there anything else before we?
I just want to piggyback on what you've just said, actually, because I think I don't think I've ever come across a philosophical syllogism that cannot be evidenced by empiricism in some way. And I've thought quite long and hard about this, and there just doesn't seem to be one. And you can talk about pure logic all day long, but at the end of the day, it seems to be demonstrated by reality. It seems to be demonstrated by empiricism at every step of the way. And that's not to say that it's not a thing and it's not important, because it's very important, and it can ask questions that can advance science, and has advanced science, and allows us to use empiricism to try and find these answers. But I don't think that in my experience, there even is a purely philosophical syllogism you could use for anything. Sven, I love talking to you. I always love your calls. Is there anything else you'd like to respond with before we let you go?
I appreciate you both. I am also just trying to expand my knowledge, so I appreciate this conversation, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too, Sven.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's, I know that we disagree on a good handful of different stuff, but I think, again, that's kind of what you were talking about earlier in the show, about modeling that good behavior in a call and an interlocutor and stuff. Even if I disagree with somebody completely wholeheartedly, if we are able to engage in those good dialogues, I'm here for it, because I think that's the way that we really do make some progress. But before we wrap up the show, Richard, I know that people can find you on the flagship show of the ACA, the nonprofits. I know that is true, and you're out there all the time on the channels modding and the Awesome Run Facebook fan groups. I've heard a rumor, and I wanted to know if you could confirm this to me. I've heard the rumor that you are now officially a regular Talk Heathen host. Is that true? Is that true?
This is true. Somebody in the upper echelons of the ACA has made the biggest mistake of their life.
Yes.
And decided to put me live on air with callers.
That's right. Threats were made, bribes were given. That's why you're here. It has nothing to do with the year's worth of work and volunteering and so forth. I mean, it has nothing to do with all that hard work. But no, you rock, man, and we are glad to have you here for sure, because I just feel like you always have great stuff to provide. And I had a great time, man. I had a fun time. I know you've got some very choice words for me about my preferences here on food and stuff, but we'll do that after, because I have to remind everybody of a couple of things. That below the chat right now, there is a fundraiser. 100% of those proceeds go directly to the ACA, and YouTube does not charge any fees. So that is a great way to help support us here. You can also become a member by clicking the join button below the video, like 99 cents a month, not that much at all. You get awesome chat emotes and stuff. You can also become a patron on Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. And you can go listen to the channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. If, however, you are unable to donate financially, folks, all you got to do is like the video. That helps us out a freaking ton. It means the world to us. It really, really helps with that algorithm. And subscribe to the channel. Just that alone is something that is so important to us every single time we do these episodes. So if you cannot donate financially, please just give us a like, join, become a member, hang out with us, subscribe, share it, make friends, all that good stuff. Also, Richard and I are going to be hanging out in the ACD right after this. So come join us in the Fan Run Discord at tiny.cc/ tiny.cc/ACD Discord. And again, just a reminder, you can become a part of the Talk Heathen community on the Fan Run Facebook page at tiny.cc/FBTHG. So definitely go hang out there. And then Richard, what's happening right after this at 3 p.m. Central Time? It's the flagship show of the ACA. What is it? What's going on again?
The flagship. Yeah. So that's the only show worth watching at 3 p.m. Central on a Sunday. The non-profits.
You heard it here, folks. That's right. And before we go, we absolutely have to give a wonderful shout out and massive thank you to the crew. Can we see those lovely faces? They put up with Richard and my crap all the time, and you can see that they have some yelling to do for both of us afterwards. I feel it coming, honestly. It's deserved. That being said, viewers, thank you so much. We absolutely appreciate you, whether you are hanging out with us now live or whether you are watching it on the replay. We are so thrilled that you are here. And whether or not you believe, if you are an essential worker, thank you. We got those love rings going because we love y'all and we appreciate all of the hard work that so many of y'all are doing still. I cannot believe 2023 and we still have to worry about this, but we do. And thank you to everybody who's putting themselves out there. We're going to keep doing our part. If you don't believe, this is a great place for you to be. This is your community. These are your people. You can come hang out with us and do the rituals and get together and have fun, but just not have to worry about any of that supernatural or prescribed belief stuff. How great is that? If you do believe, though, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
Have you ever wanted to be a host on an ACA show or be the one calling the shots behind the scenes? Are you in Austin, Texas, or at least Austin adjacent? Well, on Saturday, February 25th, make your way down to the Free Thought Library because we'll be holding open auditions for show hosts and orientations for prospective crew members. For those wanting to be hosts, you'll be able to sit in the studio where our shows are broadcast and we'll put you through your paces to see if you can be one of the new personalities of the ACA. For future crew members, you'll get hands-on experience using the equipment used for broadcast and will help us record the host auditions. If you've ever dreamed of being part of the ACA productions, then this is your chance to show us what you've got. This event is free. For more information and registration, visit tiny.cc/ACA auditions.